Good evening.
Good evening. Hello.
Hi, this is Janice.
This is Bernie.
Hi, Bernie. How are you?
Good, and yourself?
I'm okay. I see Karen and Maria are on. I guess we're waiting for Marlene and Patrick.
I believe so.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Marie. How are you?
Okay.
It's nasty. It's getting nasty outside.
Oh, my goodness. I'm just looking outside and
Yeah.
Good thing we didn't meet in person.
Oh, that wouldn't have worked.
Cold. Hold on one second. I sent out a little outline to you guys. I don't know if you got it.
How long ago?
20 minutes.
20 minutes ago? Okay, let me check. I didn't see it. I don't see it.
Really?
I don't. Oh, there it is. There it is. Sorry. Wait a minute.
So I just put together a very general outline that, I envision we would use for the final recommendations. So it doesn't really go into any details, but I guess if it were up to me, we could start with like a mission statement and what we want to achieve, and so on. And that could be, a couple of paragraphs. And then each subcommittee could have their recommendations. We would have ours fleshed out, and that was just one way that I
Maria, I just had the question as to how does this work along with what Karen was doing, which I thought that she was putting together. I thought it was specifically for policies and procedures, but maybe it's for everybody that, Karen, you're putting stuff together for. I'm not clear. I know you volunteered in our last subcommittee meeting to put together some documentation for us, or to take a stab at it.
Is Karen there? Karen, are you here?
I'm here. I'm sorry, I missed that.
All right. Oh, that's okay. Bernie, you want to repeat?
Yeah. So Marie put together a little outline of recommendation as to what our final recommendations could look like. But I thought that you were working on something for us from our last meeting. That's what I was led to understand, that you were going to work on a document that summarized our recommendations so far. And I'm not clear if you're doing that for every committee or you're just doing that for our committee.
So I'm working on it. I started to work on it. It is not done. And I am doing it for this committee. Although, when it comes to the final report, when the other subcommittee recommendations are more finalized, we do need to, Janice and I need to have a conversation about how we incorporate them into the final report and what kind of format or structure we use. So, I had done some things for community engagement as well, but I think I haven't looked at what Marie sent. I did not have a chance to do that yet, but I'm still drafting and open to things, so happy to look at that and either incorporate that into what I do or have the committee say that they want me to use that. It's fine with me. I have no pride of authorship or anything like that.
Well, Karen, like I said, I just put together like an overview of kind of what I thought you were going to be working on.
Okay.
But, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. So basically, kind of what I said was that everybody would each subcommittee would make their recommendations. And we can outline it. And if somebody wants to like incorporate that into a full report, yeah, that would be, ideal.
Right. I mean, I think as a practical matter, I will be probably the one to do that, to take all of the committee recommendations and incorporate it into a final report, the form or the structure of which, has yet to be determined. I have some ideas on it that I'll speak with Janice about and get her guidance on. But I will, I don't know if Marie, I can give you permission to share your screen if you want to bring that up. Can you, you have it in your email?
I wouldn't know how to do that.
If you would like, I could probably do it. If you would like, if the rest of the committee, that is, would like me to throw Marie's document up on the screen and share it. You let me know what you'd like me to do.
Well, I sent it to everybody, so, I don't know if you want to do that or if you want to just talk about, what our policies and procedures.
I don't see anybody else in the waiting room, so I'm not sure where Patrick and Marlene will be joining us.
So I'll start out by asking the question along with Marie, what you have down. But just a question to the committee. Have we gone through enough of the policies that you feel that we don't need to look at anything else? Or at this time, we're going to say that the policies that we have referred to, those 7 or 8 are the policies that we're going to have in our summary report?
I would think we have, the crucial ones. I mean, I would think so.
I don't know that we ever discussed the policy. I don't know if it was a policy on racial fairness. Was that something that we never really talked about?
What was that again? I wasn't clear.
I
Is
think,
that
okay, it was
biased policing you're talking about?
unbiased policing. We never really talked about that.
Isn't that the one Bernie talked about?
No, I spoke about personnel complaint.
Oh, you didn't do 2?
Just a second. Let me
I
go over my
Yeah,
notes just to be clear.
I think Marlene was supposed to do it, and then
Yeah, it was Marlene, and I was just reporting on what Marlene had put down.
Okay, so we did go over it a little.
Is Marlene on the call?
One of the things that I wanted to bring up is that in the stops and the stop and frisk field stop thing, sort of the theme of it is that police officers can use sort of minor offenses as a way to, quote, investigate crime. I was listening to an implicit bias training recently, and Seymour James, who was the president of the New York State Bar Association and also the chief attorney at the Legal Aid Society in New York City, was pointing out that the people who get stopped, broken light, or some other minor, failure to signal when changing lanes are almost inevitably, Black people like him, and so it caused me to think again about those policies in the field stops where they're suggesting, you remember, including the hoot and hum, disorderly conduct, or window tint and parking violations. It seems to me that these policies are not used uniformly among the population, and they are an invitation to police officers to abuse their authority as police officers to, search people of color. That's, just impression. I just, since I had this thought in mind, and I think that the policy is sort of giving people giving police officers the green light to head and use these minor violations to, hassle people. I think that's something that we should, think about.
So how would we want to reflect that in our summation? Do we
Well,
want to make a general statement in the summation about the policy as to what it could lead to, or what it could give rise to, versus having to be specific about any particular language in the policy?
well, I think that the thrust of the policy, it suggests directly the following, non-criminal activity could be used by you to investigate crime. And so I think that, a statement that, using, parking violations or some other of non-criminal, violations, shouldn't be used in a way that are targeting people of color or something like that. I mean, it just seems to me that it's like an invitation police officers to, use the like a foothold by the minor offenses to, stop vehicles or, stop people and start up with them, try to, search people. And, I'm troubled by it. And I think it's a theme when they're talking about, go about policing. So, I mean, I think we might want to say something, how, that the police should avoid using sort of these non-criminal kind of events on a pretext for stopping people who, they think look suspicious because of, biases they have, to politely.
I mean, that could be something that's that comes under, one I guess the stop and frisk or field stop.
I mean, yeah, right. I mean, it's the field
subdivision.
stops policy, but it also should be reflected in the unbiased policing, right? Because it's saying that policing should be unbiased. That's another way of saying you don't want to use, our authority as police officers to hassle people who are people of color just because we can. I think we want them to be sensitized in a way that, that their authority with the gun and the badge is something that should be used judiciously. I know that's just like a policy in general. I'm troubled by the field stop, the paragraph referring to the hooting and hollering stuff.
Well, there's going to be overlap between,
Yeah.
say, field stops and unbiased policing. There's no way around that. But I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't, why you couldn't spell that out and put that, under one of the policies. Now, I have a question for Karen, if you're there. In making these recommendations, like say on the policies and procedures, are they supposed to be so specific as to like cite these different sections and subsections of the police manual? Karen, or anybody for that matter.
Well, I think it's up to us,
Well,
right?
I think that Wade when Wade Hardy spoke, he spoke specifically about the fact that he felt that that we were, as he used the term, getting into the weeds
Right.
within the policies, and I think that I think there's room for both. We can continue. We could
So yeah, I
use.
don't know that. Right.
Excuse me.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think that we could use the specific comments that we have made already, but in general, have an overall general statement as to our thoughts about that policy that may be along the line of what Richard is saying. So we can have both, I think.
I mean, because to me, there's going to be two things. There's going to be a report, like a general overall report from the Police Reform Committee that says, this, that, and the other thing. And then when we get to like procedures and policies, I mean, there are all these recommendations. Does that mean we're going to rewrite the police manual? I don't think so. But how else, are these recommendations going to get in there?
Well, I think that realistically, one, and Janice and Karen, you stop me if I'm wrong, but we're providing a document that has to go to the Common Council, and they have to review these and then make their judgment as to which they feel should be adopted or not adopted, or in whatever way they wanted to manipulate or change those. But it is ultimately up to them as to whether it's a strict policy change or it's something that is written in comment to a policy.
I thought that based on the last meeting of this committee last Sunday, the decision was made after discussing it with Wade to stick to perhaps some broader recommendations, and then the more specific line-by-line recommendations could be transmitted over to the PD kind of separately, because a lot of work and thought has gone into them. but that they wouldn't necessarily all be included in that final report.
I don't agree with it at all. I mean, like I know that people are saying we're getting into the weeds, but this is the Policies and Procedures Committee. And if we spend hours and hours looking at these policies and seeing portions of these policies that are, unlawful, policies that are maybe lawful, but we think are wrong, I think it's our obligation to, recommend that those policies be changed specifically. And example, they had talked about this repeatedly, permission for police officers to engage in stop frisk behaviors that were beyond that which law permit. You need reasonable suspicion that the person has committed, is committing, or has committed a crime and is armed and dangerous. Period. End of story. Further, nothing. Okay. And instead, they have this business about past articulated experience. We have to recommend that be stricken. They can do whatever they want with it. We're not going to just send it to the police department. We're going to send it to the Common Council because it's wrong. And, if the police want to say, well, we want to do it anyway, let them say it. The Common Council decide we're wrong and the cops are right. But I mean, if there's policies in there that are conflict with the law, which there are, and if there's policies there that are troubling, which because they suggest that police officers can use BS, violation to hassle people, there's policies that are suggesting that police officers can use deadly force in situations when we don't think they should be using deadly force. We have to be recommending to the committee that or to the Common Council, or at least to the committee at large, that those things changed. And yeah, that's specific. But I think it's the obligation of this committee, if we see that there's something wrong, specific recommendations, because generalizations are can just be like, yeah, that's great. Be good. I think cops should be good from now on. Okay. It's not going to do anything. So that, I think.
Janet?
I think there are some policies that do, there are others like, personnel complaints and maybe video recording that are, we can make broader recommendations.
I just instead of a personnel complaint, I think that my recommendation is not broad. It is specific. And just as Richard is saying, I do think that there's value in documenting what we've done and what we've cited. Now, I think that all of that can be put in a report with a general statement as to each of the policies that we might have covered, in addition to an overall view of the policies that we've done, that we've looked at, and the common things that we find to be of need to change in them, and that be submitted as a body of work that we've done. I don't think it has to be one or the other.
All right, well, do we want to take, the policies that we've already discussed, each of us took a different topic. Do we want to put all those together?
That's what we're working on, right?
Right, well, okay, I guess my question is, how do we want to put those all together?
Well, I think that we've essentially done that. We have specific things from each of the policies that we've stated, and we've actually presented many of those things in that format that I think we would generally include that in a summary report in. What we don't have is just a overall summary, for example, of this particular policy, as I think that you were leading to in your format that you had put together just now that you sent out, as I took a look at. I don't see why this is difficult to think about. We have specific recommendations. We have an overall general recommendation, a statement about the policy, and there we go. Both go together.
Can I just say, are we done with recommendations? Are we satisfied with the recommendations that we have put together that was presented last week at the meeting I think we had on the 2nd or 3rd, I don't remember, but are we done with recommendations?
I don't know, are we?
Well, I think we were talking about whether we need to review the unbiased leasing policy.
Okay, because I was looking at recommendations and I sent I think I sent everyone a copy of it, and I was hoping that we would use this time tonight or our Sunday meeting to see if those were something that we would want to consider putting in as recommendations.
Can you go over those, Janet, if you have them with you? Maybe it makes sense that the recommendations that you have down or what you're stating, that we kind of cover that tonight, as you're saying.
Well, I
Yeah.
was looking at several different organizations, and they have put out recommendations. The National Association of Blacks in Law Enforcement had put out some that I thought was quite, were good. The organization PROP, but they're based out of New York City, they put out some that I thought was good. And Campaign Zero, I was really impressed with some of the recommendations that they put out. So I, copied them and sent them to you to see if we thought that these would be worth us recommending. And I wanted to have some feedback on them. But I also wanted to know, were we done, or did we think we were done with, or do we think we have, we covered everything, and are we ready to finalize? Because I didn't think we were done.
Outside of the information that you just sent us, that
I
you
don't know
just
that we're
mentioned,
done either.
what other,
Okay.
do we need to spend more time on policies that we've already gone over, or do we need to spend time on a few of the policies that we might not have covered as thoroughly as we might have some of the others?
Okay, so for instance, I want to add this as a recommendation that we require officers to give a verbal warning when possible before using deadly force, and give people a reasonable amount of time to comply with the warning. Now, I don't know if that is already in the policy, and see, that's what I wanted to go over, because I wasn't sure, because I know Richard and Marie, you guys are lawyers, and you guys, you know a whole lot more than I do. So I wasn't sure if that was something that's already in the policy, or if we should be thinking about adding something like that.
Well, that's in the response to resistance policy.
It
doesn't say anything about giving anybody using it as a last resort or anything like that.
So my thinking is that we make that a recommendation.
Right.
It's okay with me.
So
Okay.
yeah, I actually printed out the Campaign Zero, that
I'm losing you, Marie.
the article that you sent, and I mean, we certainly could incorporate it. We could even, reference it in our recommendations. I don't see why we couldn't do that.
What do you mean when you say? What do you mean when you say reference it?
Well, if we're going to come up with like our recommendations, one of our recommendations could be, say, follow the use of force policy as set out by Campaign Zero in this particular article, or something along those lines.
I don't think we can do that. And
because I
correct me
did
if I'm
read it.
wrong.
It's all, I mean, most of it.
I'm losing you, Marie.
Why do you think we can't do that?
Well, I think that we can just go ahead and make it a recommendation of our own. Why do
Yeah.
we have to reference Campaign Zero? If we're
We
okay
don't.
with it, why can't we, as the Policies and Procedures Committee, just make that a
Well, I
recommendation?
guess we want to give, yeah,
Excuse me?
right. I guess we want to give credit where credit is due.
I mean, I see what
I
you're
mean,
saying.
it does say it's a model.
Oh, I do see what you're saying. I see
Right.
what you're saying. Yeah. But, you know,
Yeah, I mean, we could adopt the whole thing. We could adopt the whole thing if we, you know,
if
we
we
recommend
we
that.
thought it was appropriate for White Plains, for the White Plains PD, and I thought they were, and I wanted to
Yes.
discuss it with the lawyers and Bernie and see what you guys thought about it, because I may be I don't want us to recommend something that's already in place. But
Well,
probably not, because this stuff goes beyond, you know, a lot of this is beyond what is legally required.
Okay, so
Like
listen to,
alternatives.
well, also, now this is what the Campaign Zero says. Authorize deadly force only when there is imminent threat to an officer's life or the life of another person, and such force is strictly unavoidable to protect life as required under international law. Deadly force should only be authorized after all other reasonable alternatives have been exhausted. So is that what they're saying? Because that's not what I read.
what do you mean? Is that what who's saying?
The White Plains PD policies.
Oh
say.
no, we went over this.
Okay.
The White Plains Police Department rules
Right.
refer to penal law section 35, which permits a police officer to shoot down a fleeing felon. It permits police officers to kill people if they believe that that person has committed a violent felony offense, or something like this. And so one of the things that we recommended is that our policies be stricter than, which is permitted the justification statute in that a police officer is prosecuted.
All right. Well,
and you know, this should be limited. I mean, what you're suggesting, or what Campaign Zero is suggesting you're endorsing, is beyond, you know, what our initial recommendation was, that you know, that the police officer can only use deadly force and he believes it's necessary to protect himself or another person from serious physical injury or death, which is part of the police policy. But then it goes to list these other things in which you can kill people.
Right.
And but what you're suggesting is more than just that, but it's like every alternative is not. I don't know. There was a whole list of things that.
Right. Because Wade had also talked about using time and space, and you know, before we go into, you know, using deadly force. So, you know, I'd like to make these recommendations part of our report, if everyone is on board with it, because you guys know more than me. This is what you guys do for a living.
No. See, what we're recommending to the committee is what we think the rule of police officer should be. What the lawyers can tell you is the rule is now.
Okay.
In other words,
okay, got you.
Civil liability of the city of White Plains, or I'll just put it broadly, a municipality, or a police officer who commits an act for which they're later sued. So that's the standard for civil liability. And then there's a standard for the police officer's criminal liability for killing somebody or using excessive force. We can tell you what those standards are, but this committee is what I was trying to suggest, and this was contrary to what Captain Spencer was saying, is that we can recommend that the policy for the city of White Plains be stricter than is be permitted by New York State, for example, justification law. So that just because that law that, enacted like, God knows when, many years ago, that permits a police officer to shoot somebody who is running away after committing what the police officer thinks is a felony, we can say, we don't want police officers firing weapons and shooting people under those circumstances. Right? We can do that. And so what you're suggesting is that, can we have this more, restrictive policy that Campaign Zero recommends? We can recommend whatever we want.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I agree. We can make the recommendation, and I just don't want us to not make recommendations because we're unsure. So I'd like us to make any recommendation that the group feels is worth making. Now, whether they adopt it or not is a different story. When it's all said and done, the community is going to know we recommended it.
Right.
So that's what I want to do. I don't want to let the community down by saying, well, we didn't think we should, well, we didn't this, or they said that. I want us to recommend anything we feel is going to benefit the community and help build trust.
I think that the Campaign Zero policy is something that we should definitely either refer to in whole as a recommendation, whether we have reviewed whatever issues and topics are in the current policies. I think that this should be adopted just as a matter of course.
But I
Definitely
think we have,
should be.
I think, Bernie, and I'm not sure, but I think we have to make the specific recommendations. I don't think we can just tell them to refer to Campaign Zero's.
Definitely.
No,
Definitely.
I'm not saying that we just refer to it. I'm
Okay.
saying that we recommend that the language that's used in Campaign Zero should be used to.
Yeah.
Well,
Do you
I
understand
think,
where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
yeah,
I think we're all in agreement with the same thing.
but I think that we have to make individual, and I can talk to Karen about that, individual recommendations. And in the end, we can put the little clause in there or the disclosure that these were taken from Campaign Zero's policy recommendations.
100%.
Yes. So, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Some of them were taken from, or I'm still going to go over, some of them have been, I have looked at from the National Association from Blacks in Law Enforcement. They had a couple of good ones on there too. And so did PROP. And I'm pretty sure that there are others, but, I just was particularly interested in what Campaign Zero was saying. So if Karen didn't mind, and I don't think she will, because she's been more than, she's been more than amazing with helping us with this process. I think each recommendation that we want to make has to be made individually.
And you have to help me understand what you mean by. Do you mean that, for example, if we're looking at where it says establish standards and reporting of police using deadly force, it says A, authorized deadly force only. Do you mean that we have to take that and embed that into some place within the
We have to put
policy
that in
for
our
deadly
report.
force?
We have to put that in our report.
No, I'm just asking a little further. Are you saying that we have to, for example, take item A and find the location in the deadly force policy that the police currently have and marry that into it?
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm
Okay,
thinking.
okay.
No,
I
that's
just
not what
wanted
I'm
to
thinking at all.
understand.
No,
I
no,
understand.
not at all.
Okay.
I think that
Okay.
will be their job to do. I think we make the recommendation
Yes.
and they decide, how they're going to put it in their policy, their book. We make the recommendation. It's part of our report.
Yes. Yeah.
And that they have to handle how they put it in their book.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I mean, one of the recommendations that we're going to have is that they need to do their recommendations because the numbering system inside these recommendations is all messed up. So there's numbers under numbers, like, it was created by somebody who, doesn't know how to create an outline.
Well, and I
But
think
that's a whole other issue.
that's a whole
Yeah, but
different
that's why
issue.
we're not going to be able to fix the whole thing. I mean, they're going to have to do that.
We can recommend that they go and look at their book for, these kind of inconsistencies in numbering and lettering, but our mandate by the governor is recommendations for, police reform and the way it affects the community. So
Right.
that could be one of our and also we recommend that you relook at the way the book is written. But
Well, but I'm just saying that's one reason why we can't necessarily figure out where they're going to put the policy in the book.
Oh, exactly. I agree with that. I agree. So
It's going to drive us crazy.
I commented. I've commented on that several times. That there are, labelings and notations and page nations. There's just so many things within the general structure of the policy book that exists now that needs to be improved.
Well, that
Yeah.
could be one of our recommendations. We
But
recommend that the police, the White Plains Police overhaul their, policy and procedures manual, keeping these principles in mind, blah, blah, blah. And also, so that it's clearer and more concise so that the average person, can follow it a lot better than it is.
Yeah, that could be our, in closing, we also recommend,
Right.
this, but it's not going to be our focal point.
No, it's not the only thing. It's one recommendation
It's going to
among,
be a recommendation,
many.
of many. So anyway, if we could just go through these Campaign Zero recommendations that I printed out, if we're all good with each one of them, then I would like to say to Karen to include these in the policies and procedures report.
Well, let's take a look at them.
Okay, so we can take a look at them. Yes. Did I hear Marlene? Yes, she's
Yes,
on.
you did.
Good. Okay, good, Marlene. How you doing?
I'm good.
Okay. Did everyone get a copy of these recommendations?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
looking at it right now.
Okay.
So are you looking at the recommendations that you sent out, Janice, or the
Yeah.
entire?
No, I sent out my I copied and pasted.
The thing from Campaign Zero itself.
I copied and
Okay.
pasted
That's what I thought.
some, and I put down on the top, these recommendations come from Campaign Zero.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Okay, I have that.
So I already read over letter A.
Yeah.
Do you want?
I'm reading that. I don't know
Okay. I'm sorry.
what international law are they, referring to?
I certainly don't, but I just thought that I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't think it mattered. I liked what I agreed with the concept.
Yeah, I like A through E. I think they're all fine.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not sure when it says D, require reporting of police killings, serious injury to who? Reporting to who?
Require reporting of police killings and serious injuries of civilians.
To who?
Well, we might need to add that. Like, what do you think?
Well, I don't know. What is the Pride Act or the Colorado law?
I can look into that, but I was thinking, where do they go now?
Well, they go to the police department.
Well, I'm thinking we're going to be also recommending a civilian review board.
Yes.
And an independent investigator. I don't know how that's going to work.
Yes.
but I would think that
I'm trying to look through the article. Yeah,
okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
let's see.
I'm gonna go check
I'm
on.
just
I'm
looking
gonna
through
go
the
check
article.
on that. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to find where that came from.
Okay.
Hmm.
Marie is looking, I'm okay with the bold that says end traffic related police killings. Okay with that.
Uh-huh.
I like the rise and strengthen police departments. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff is stuff that we're already sort of recommending. Except I'm not sure what a less lethal weapon means.
Could it mean a baton? Could it mean a taser?
I guess it can be things.
Yeah.
Well,
What are you
like,
referring to, Richard? Where are you
what are
reading
they?
this again?
Yeah,
Page 2 of the thing I got from Jan as revised strengthen local police department use of force policies. And then it has some bullet points. And one of them is carry a less lethal weapon.
I'm thinking like those rubber bullets, the guns with the rubber bullets.
Yeah, it's a pretty severe, I've also heard of people, having a heart attack from getting a taser. So I don't know. There's like issues with using these things that are less lethal weapons, and I guess not a bad idea in general.
Do you want to recommend? Would you like to add something to that?
The only thing I have to say about it is that if you have a quote less lethal weapon, you're going to have police training on when it should be used and when it should not be used, because these things, have to be used sparingly, judiciously,
Well,
when it's really necessary. So
we can also recommend that they be trained on less lethal weapons. We can also, put that in.
yeah.
That they be trained on less lethal weapons.
Or maybe just less lethal methods.
Okay. Yeah.
Instead of weapons. I don't know what those methods would be, but.
Well, I mean, I think what they're saying is that if it's the choices between shooting somebody or trying to disable them with a taser or something like that, you try, if you can, to, if it's reasonable to, tase the person instead of shooting them. But
what I understand is it says carry a less lethal. Don't they carry less lethal weapons?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what they carry.
I mean, I would think that they do have less lethal, but they tend to use the lethal ones. So maybe.
What are they referring to when they say less lethal weapon? Is a taser less lethal than a pistol?
Sure.
Is mace is used
Definitely.
also by police. So is mace less lethal than a taser? What's less lethal?
Anything that doesn't automatically kill you is less lethal.
Right. And like the idea is lethal than a pistol, or a shotgun.
Well, maybe we might want to expand on that one a little bit. Like,
well, we could say carry a less lethal weapon, with appropriate training, and we could just
I just don't like the word carry, because I'd rather say something like use. Carrying. I mean, Okay,
Well,
so they carry
just
it.
means
What
it's
about,
available to you so that, if you're the police officer and you have a lethal weapon, then you have an alternative to shooting the guy dead.
Okay.
I understand where Janice is coming from though, because have we need to say have access to.
and we need to say use,
Yeah.
when appropriate, use the less lethal. If it's not
Okay, that's fine.
necessary to go straight for the heart, can we, use something less lethal?
Right. I just think that we should have something in there about,
Yeah.
because we don't want to encourage them to, use these less lethal weapons, except that they're really, really necessary. Also, can be
Yeah, well, we can work on
painful.
the language. We can work on the
Right.
language.
I mean, look, hands can be lethal. A
Yeah,
chokehold is lethal and there's no weapons there.
well, that's very true.
Oh,
So, even though it does say ban chokeholds, and that's already been banned in New York, I still think that the rest of the sentence is okay to have in there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I like, see, it's got this business about moving to the next paragraph. Monitor how use or are accountable for excessive force. Report all uses of force to a database, information on related injuries and demographics. I mean, I like that, but who's the database? I mean,
That's for
what
us.
database?
We need to come up with that language. We need to decide how we want that worded. They're vague. They're being very vague, I think, in this recommendation, and maybe we can come up with more specific language.
I mean, we could, put something in there, report to the district attorney's office or, whatever.
Yeah, well, do we want
Whatever.
to be a public database? I mean, who do we want to have access to the database? Do we want the general public to know this, or do we want,
Well,
the
no, I'm
city
looking, going
council to
back to the
see it?
first page, right?
Yeah.
Where the first page says require reporting of police killings and serious injuries of civilians. I mean, I would go further and say require reporting to the district attorney's office or independent prosecutor, and so on. I mean, if you're gonna
Yeah.
report to a database, then they're gonna have to, somebody's gonna have to, form
It
this
is
or create this
practical matters.
database.
The D office is going to get that anyhow.
The what?
If there's the D office is going to police, if the police killed somebody,
Right.
the DA's office is going to be all over that. The question is
yeah.
Civilian authority, somebody outside the police department or somebody outside of law enforcement,
Right.
right? Because the problem,
authority.
some communities where police shoot somebody and then they keep it quiet, keep a lid on it for months, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, here's the body cam showing that the cop killed the person who wasn't permitted or something. So we want to recommend that information concerning a police killing, serious injury, be disclosed to civil authority. And that civilian authority's got to be somebody outside the public safety department. The DA's office is traditionally in every community, they work hand in glove with the police department. And this is not necessarily a criticism, but they're not really independent. So, and that's why we have the repeated problem of, the police officers. Oh, we presented the case to the grand jury. By God, it was perfectly fine to kill this person. Okay, nothing to see here. So I think we want to report this to civilian authority. And certainly it should be, if we had a CCRB, it should be with them. And we don't have that now. it should be reported at least to somebody like the mayor's office or the city council in White Plains, at least.
I
You know,
agree, but I agree with you on that. It should be reported to someone other than the police department, but we are going to recommend the CCRB. I don't know if we're going to get it, but if we said report this information to an outside independent department, would that be sufficient enough or no?
well, it doesn't say who. I mean, who is, you know,
Oh yeah, well,
you could
who?
suggest like, you know, if we want to, we can suggest, you know, the mayor's office or to the, you know, to the Westchester County Board of Legislators or to the city council. I mean, you know, we could make
But
suggestions.
Richard, as a practical matter, what is the mayor's office going to do about it?
Yeah, I don't think the
Well,
mayor's
they're
office is
responsible to the people. I mean, you could, if there's a police killing and the mayor's office has this and this material, the people could demand that the mayor's office release it to the public. Whereas if the material is in the possession of the police department and the mayor's, well, I don't have it.
okay.
You know,
Got you with that one. Yeah. Okay. As long as do we think we want to make it public, like put in on their website? Like we're requiring them to report the use of force on their website related to the injuries and the demographics. I mean,
you know, the problem with that is if there is an ongoing investigation,
yeah,
I mean, it could be
yeah,
potentially compromised.
yeah, yeah. You're right. Okay, so I think that's something that we need to work on. I don't think we don't have to know tonight, but I think that language is something we should work on as to before Karen makes this final. I
Right.
think we should work on that particular recommendation. I like the idea of the recommendation, but we need to finish it.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. I
Right.
mean,
And
I think
who's going to
that
do
an
the
issue-
reporting? You know, who's
What-
going to do the reporting?
When do you
The police
it
department
should
would be
be-
responsible for that, right?
say that again?
The police department would be responsible.
I
for the
would think that
reporting.
the police department would have to do the reporting, and it would have to be something he doesn't have a choice in.
Right. Well,
You
it would
know.
have to be, you know, a particular person, you know, a chief or
Well, the
commissioner, whoever it is.
yeah, I think we got to fine tune that one a little bit.
Right.
So I'm putting an asterisk next to that one because I think we need to fine tune it.
Yeah, because
And
it could be part of that complaint system that I mentioned. It could be a system that gets, when it gets entered, it doesn't have to be who reports it. It's in the system and can be reported to multiple entities at one time.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Good.
I put an asterisk next to carry a less lethal weapon and letter A. So those two so far, I think we need to fine tune.
I mean, you mean the database one, letter A,
Excuse me?
report all, you mean the database one, report all uses of force through a database.
Right, I put yeah, we need to fine tune that one, and we also need to fine tune the one that says carry a less lethal weapon.
Well, you know
Okay.
what? That carry a less lethal weapon, I mean, that could be deleted, you know.
Altogether? Okay.
Yeah, because it does leave itself open to interpretation. Like, well,
Yeah.
what's a weapon?
Okay.
A billy club, a baseball bat.
Okay. Because it also, in the very first one, it also says restricts officers from using deadly force unless all reasonable alternatives have been exhausted. So I guess
Right.
that would be something less lethal.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay. So we could definitely cross that one out. I agree with you on that one. Yeah, I
I'm
think,
okay with that.
okay. So on the next page, the third page, what are you guys thinking?
I mean, I'm okay with that. You're talking about C?
Yeah.
I'm okay
Well,
with
did
that.
we look at B? Did we look at B?
I mean, I'm okay with that too. It's about an
Okay.
early intervention system.
Okay. Okay. What about C?
Uh, yeah, I mean, this is more specific. It talks about this should be a database accessible to the public. And this is after an officer is found to have willfully violated department policy or the law. Okay. So I think
I
we're
mean,
going to
it
get a
could
lot of
be a
pushback on this,
state.
but you know,
Say that again. I'm sorry, Richard. What'd you say?
could get pushback because they're not going to, you know, they have, do you remember how they were talking about their collective bargaining agreement?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they have this collective bargaining agreement that has this structure for imposing discipline on police officers. And he didn't even want to tell us too much about it, thinking that maybe it's a secret and we don't have security for it or something. And so what this policy is saying is that police officers who have been found to have willfully violated department policy or the law are prohibited serving as police officers. And, you know, they're going to say that, you know, you can't fire somebody except if it, you know, is in compliance with whatever the policies of the collective bargaining agreement are.
Yeah, that's true. They will say that.
That's
but
what they're going to say that.
I think we can still
I mean,
put
we
it
can
in there.
recommend, we can recommend it. I'm just saying, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
this is
We
what they're
might
going
get
to
some
say.
pushback. You're right. We might get some pushback. We're going to get pushback. I expect some pushback in things, but we're going to still make the recommendation because when we have to answer to the community, we're going to say we told them, we asked them, and they did not. So we don't look like we were remiss in putting it out there.
The collective bargaining is the same thing as the matrix.
No, the collective bargaining is like a
It's a
union contract, right? So
Okay.
that you are, if you're like the police officers benevolent association, every so often, every few years, they negotiate a contract with the city, and that
Okay.
according to the chief, the contract has procedures for discipline of police officers, you know, so that they go in front of some kind of a hearing and they, you know, evidence gets presented against them. And then, you know, somebody makes a recommendation and ultimately the police department, the police chief or somebody decides if they, you know, deserve to get discipline and, you know, whether they lose time, you know, like whether, you know, docked pay for a certain period of time or suspended, or whether they get demoted or whether they get fired, you know, those kinds of things.
Okay.
Well, we're not going to take away their right to counsel at a, you know, hearing.
No,
Yeah,
it's
they
not
can-
about counsel, but I mean, it's about, this policy is recommending that the person, if they found to have violated this a law or a policy, it says prohibit serving police officers. So that's saying that the policy that we're recommending, and I'm okay with this, but it's like we're recommending that if the person is found violate a police policy or say engage in excessive force, then that means that the police officer is going to be fired.
That's what we're recommending.
Okay.
And we
They're
already
going to,
know,
so we're going to get pushback, but
we're going
okay.
to get pushback. We're going to get pushback and we expect it, but we're going to still make that recommendation. That's my belief. That's my feelings. If the you know, that we're going to get some pushback. What about the very last thing that I put down?
You mean the reporting?
No, the removing barriers to reporting police misconduct. Yes.
I think
I
that
mean,
that works. Yeah, I think that works.
at least you should say offer as opposed to give, because if the civilian says, like, I decline to receive your name, badge number, or whatever else you want to give me. I mean, I guess
Well,
it doesn't matter. But,
yeah, I guess that if they say they don't want it, then they can throw it away. But the officer should give it,
okay.
when he gives them the ticket or or whatever, whatever he does, he should give them that information. And that should be something he has to do. Now, if the person doesn't want to take it, that's on them. That's on them.
Okay.
So out of these that we have in front of us, we're going to kind of refine, or the one about the reporting the use of force to a database. That's the one that we have to kind of look at, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Did I send you the recommendation? Did I send you the recommendations from the National Black Police Association?
No,
I sent that too.
no, I did. At least I didn't receive it.
I don't think I sent that. But if one of the lawyers, Richard or Marie, could you help me understand, what does qualified immunity mean?
Oh, okay. So qualified immunity is it's a sort of a policy the Supreme Court of the United States has found as a way of shielding police officers or municipalities from civil liability by saying that, except in a very limited set of circumstances, police officers have this immunity, meaning they can't be sued, except in these limited circumstances. So, as we've talked about, the limited circumstances are described most frequently in a case called Graham versus Connor, where they said a police officer's use of force has to be analyzed under the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, which is the amendment which prohibits the use of unreasonable searches and seizures, because the use of force is akin to a search and seizure. And so then they said that the use of force has to be looked at not with 2020 hindsight, saying, oh, well, it turns out he didn't really need to use that force, but looking at it from an objectively reasonable standpoint, at what the police officer was faced at the moment when he exercised the use of force. So it requires juries to take the side of the police officer, the facts they find are known to the police officer at the moment that he pulls the trigger, and decide if that was what he did was reasonable under the circumstances, without the benefit of quote unquote 2020 hindsight. So, from the point of view of rights attorneys, this is a very difficult standard to meet. You're the plaintiff, that is, if you're the person who's suing because it's your husband's killed, for example, because you have to overcome all of these sort of barriers to getting justice. And so that's what qualified immunity does.
It's almost impossible.
Correctamundo.
So they're making it very hard to sue. It's almost impossible. So is that a state thing, or is that?
No, that's the Supreme Court of the United States interpreting 42 United States Code, Section 1983, which is the Civil Rights Act, civil rights violations under color of state law that can be brought by a citizen for violating somebody's civil rights.
Is there anything we can do about that, or no?
There's nothing we can do about that.
Okay.
You can vote for more Democrats who will elect better politicians, who will put new
Okay.
court justices in. They could amend the Civil Rights Act. That's another thing that could happen. I wouldn't hold my breath, but that's another thing that could happen. But it's not happening at our level, not in the city of Wayne. It's got nothing to do with us. Did I wrong, Marie?
I
Interesting.
think
Very
we lost
interesting.
her.
Who?
Marie. She's not connected for some reason.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I don't know what happened.
Oh, I don't know what happened. So, um,
I have a
besides-
quick question, Richard. In regards to police discipline or them receiving any consequences, is there anything that we can add? Because I know they constantly mention that it's in their contract, it's in the contract, but is there anything we can add to create like a policy so at least the general public can see that there is some form of discipline? It's not so hush hush in regards to that.
I don't hear Richard.
I don't know if you heard me.
he heard you. He just got muted. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yikes. So yeah, we recommend that if a police officer is found to have willfully used excessive force against somebody, that they be fired, for example. We could recommend that if that's
Okay.
what we want to do. I mean, they can, they can say like, well, we're not doing it, and whatever. They can, it doesn't stop us from recommending it.
Okay. But
We
what
would
if it's not, let's say it's not to the extent of excessive force, but they use like intimidation tactics. They use almost a sense of like bullying, because I know that that's been a concern for people that I've talked to, that's what they've experienced from White Plains police officers. Like, if the police know that they're in a relationship with a particular person, they'll go after the girlfriend,
Yeah.
the boyfriend, rather than the person that they really want, as a way of intimidation, bullying tactics.
So what do we want to have be do we want to what we think should be a required punishment, or we want to I don't know.
I guess my concern was that looking through everything, there was nothing, at least in the policies, which the chief said is their general outline, that mentioned consequences for inappropriate behavior or anything like that. He just keeps saying, him and Captain Spencer continuously say that it's in their contract, and we haven't seen the contract. So I guess I was just looking.
Well, I mean, do you think we should recommend that there be a punishment imposed for behaviors, or we suggest that there should, that somebody should face some specific consequences, or I'm not sure what we want to recommend.
Can someone
I
contact?
think at minimum there should be a documenting of the infraction that an officer may make, or how they may bully someone. But once again, that will have to be it becomes, and let me just ask you this, Richard, then it becomes, if I say that an officer has bullied me, do I need some proof to make that statement?
No, your own yeah,
Yeah.
my one. Okay. Yeah. So your own testimony about what the police officer did, that's evidence.
Yes. And so,
I mean, somebody's going to have to decide if that evidence is sufficient, right? Because anybody could lie about anything. But let's assume that a fact finder has found that, your complaint is truthful. Maybe you've got a video of it, maybe you have witnesses to it, whatever, they find it's truthful. Then there should be some real discipline and, a reporting, again, like this database that we're talking about, so that it doesn't get swept under the rug, I guess is what we're getting at.
Yes, essentially, yes.
Can somebody contact Marie and see if she's trying to get in, or call her? Cause I don't know why she's not on the call. I don't know how to contact her.
I'll try to call her.
Okay. Well,
And then my other question, I was looking at the not the persons in crisis policy, and I saw that it focused predominantly on people that are more so in a drug state crisis. Is that also intended to cover those that may be going through a mental health crisis? For example, Kenneth Chamberlain, who had Alzheimer's, and me having relatives that have Alzheimer's, I know anger is a big part of them having Alzheimer's. So is there a way that we can include that, or is it discussed in another section that I just haven't read?
it is going to be covered in the mental health with the training. It is going to be covered, but
that's with training. Okay.
Right. But we can also say something about it. We can definitely make recommendations for that. I mean, when Karen puts the report together, she can like if the same recommendation is in there twice, I'm sure she won't put it in there. But
just say who recommended it twice.
But she can say it's been recommended, twice. I don't know how she would word it. She has a way with words, so we're gonna leave that up to her. But we can also say something like, I don't know if anybody is familiar with the Cahoots program, and that's a very successful program from Oregon, and they have made the suggestion that only social workers and trained mental health people should determine whether a cop should be on the call, when it comes to a mental health crisis. They have said, and I'm looking for that piece of paper, but they said that they should get the call first. Somehow they should get the call first, or the 911 call should be, diverted to them, and that a mental health person should decide whether a police officer is on the scene, and if they are on the scene, if they should be in uniform or not, or if they will need restraints, so we can kind of put that down too, I mean, in
so
some
I guess
way.
I will go with the policy, because there's a policy that we read in regards to them having access to social workers and mental health professionals, but they only have access to them for a certain amount of time. So
Right.
I guess
So
extending that so it's a 24-hour period instead of I think it's like 9 to 7 or something like that.
That's definitely something we could say. Create a 24-hour mobile crisis team of
Yeah,
social.
I mean, we're probably going to need to have, thing like that be like with multiple towns or cities, because
I didn't hear you. What you said?
You're probably going to, as a practical matter, we're going to need to have, multiple towns or cities participating in something like that. You wouldn't have to have one for White Plains and one for Greenberg.
Right. It would take some work in putting it together. And it's definitely going to come up as a budget issue. But I don't think a budget issue should stop us from making the recommendation.
No, right. I'm just saying that, the mayor actually said to me, like, we think thinks that's a good idea, but it would be really great if we could have, maybe we could have, somebody for Southern Westchester or Mid-Westchester or Northern Westchester be on call, that you wouldn't have to have a mental health person be on call 24/7 for every county, or every city. I mean, one for Hollow and one for Mount Pleasant.
That would take some planning and work. But I think if we make the recommendation, then they would need to try to see how they could put it together. I don't know if we're going to be required to plan it out, how it's going to look. I think, I mean, if we have suggestions, I guess we can put suggestions down, but I know I've been in other meetings with other communities, and their thinking is we're going to make the recommendation and they're going to figure out how to make it work, so
Okay.
I don't know if that's, oh, Marie is back. Hi, Marie.
I'm back. Hi. I lost my internet for a while.
Oh, we missed you.
Did I miss anything?
I don't know. We've been talking for a while, so you might.
That's okay. I think I can pick up on it.
Right. I know Merlene was talking a lot about, she had mentioned about the discipline or the lack of knowledge, the lack of discipline, so Rich talked a little bit about that. We talked about the qualified immunity because I didn't know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
So he explained that to me, and it basically what it means is there's hardly any way you can sue an officer.
Right.
Basically, it's very, very difficult, and it's kind of out of our control. So,
Right.
I don't know.
All right. So what's our next step?
Well, are we all on board with recommending these recommendations on top of the ones that we already made?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
I think so. I think so.
So that's good. So we can. I don't hear from Bernie. Is he still on?
Yeah, he's here.
Bernie, there.
I'm here.
All right.
I went out to look for Marie.
Oh. Okay. So I think. Well, those were my recommendations. I mean,
One thing I
Plagiarized.
just wanted to mention to you, Janice, is that I remember looking at the unbiased policing policy, and in my notes that I had sent around to people, there's a place where it said, where appropriate, officers are encouraged to intervene at the time the policing incident occurs. And I think we should be saying that officers should be required to interfere to stop biased policing and required to report it to supervisors.
I agree with that.
I mean,
okay, so there is a part of that in the policies that I sent you. It says intervene to stop. We can strengthen that sentence. We can strengthen that recommendation. It's there.
I mean, just because the
intervene.
current policy is, I think, something that we should specifically say is, a bad idea.
Okay, we can say that, and we can recommend what we think would be more appropriate. And I guess
Yeah.
So would that also cover like whistleblower policy? Would that also cover that in that?
I'm sorry.
Couldn't hear
I
you.
said, would that also cover whistleblowers? Because I know I had a while ago I had read an article about a woman from Buffalo who had essentially been a whistleblower, and she lost everything and was fired, lost her pension because of it.
Yeah, I don't think it's covered by any policies that we've looked at.
Yeah, I
think we
haven't seen
should.
anything either.
I think it's worth looking into. I think it's definitely worth looking into.
Okay.
Well, the personal complaint policy is supposed to cover whether it be an internal or an external complaint.
Oh,
Okay, so then I'll look at that again to see if that's included in there.
However, as I said before, as I really think is needed, is the complaint process does not work today. It needs to be modified. It needs to be enhanced electronically so that complaints can be done online, by phone, by cell phone, by internet, and someone receive a ticket for their stated complaint. And that complaint can be whether it is a civilian or another officer or some other government entity making a complaint. So that definitely needs to be updated. Even if we don't get a CCRB, to upgrade this complaint process is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, the the recommendation that I put down about each officer handing everybody they come in contact with for all stops instructions for filing a complaint to the civilian oversight structure. Maybe we can recommend that these same cards that they're handing out when they stop someone, that they're also available online. So because a lot of the complaints are not going to come from stops that police officers made. So maybe we can say, and these same cards should be available to the community, via online. They can download it, they can come
Yeah,
pick it up.
it needs to be posted in social media. It needs to be posted on a newspaper. It needs to be part of news reports. It needs to be a constant vigilance to allow people to understand that they have various ways to submit their complaint and actually track that complaint. That's the difference. Right now, there is no tracking of that complaint. It's only internal tracking. But individual who has made a complaint only knows if they receive a U.S. mail that their complaint has been received and is being processed, and has ended in some report, and that is insufficient.
Well, can we suggest putting some type of barcode on these cards where it gives?
I think that just the vehicle of a barcode, Janet, is not enough. There needs to be a defined system which collects data about a complaint, and that complaint is able to be monitored and reviewed by the complainant at any given time. And those complaints are put into a database that can be then reviewed by a civilian complaint review board, the mayor, the common council, whoever needs to review those complaints. Because you may have complaints about one particular officer that happens across the entire city. This officer is a menace to the city. And there are multiple complaints being made about this, but there's no way right now for citizens or civilians to understand if there are multiple complaints about one particular officer. That cannot exist, and
Yeah.
that has to stop immediately.
Well, we need to find a way to word that into um, a
Yes,
recommendation.
I will write that into a recommendation.
Anything else we need to do tonight?
Well, let me just say this, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Bernie. First of all, are we still meeting on Sunday?
I believe we are meeting on Sunday. We still have the time should be allotted for us,
Okay.
so that we can solidify these thoughts.
Okay, because I'm gonna also continue to look at some other recommendations, and just so I don't want to miss nothing. I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to miss anything. So I would encourage us to, until time is up, and Karen says time is up, we can't come up with anything else. I would encourage us to see if we've missed anything. And I know I'm going to continue to look at the national, and I'm going to send a copy to everyone on this committee, the National Black Police Association's recommendations. They have some that are good, and also there was another organization, but I'll send you what I have so we can look at them. And if you have anything you want to send to the group, send it, because we can't miss anything, guys. This is very important. And so I think we should keep looking into. I think our
Janice,
book.
Go ahead, Marie.
No, that was me.
No, that was Janice.
I think
sorry, go ahead.
I think our report that we're going to bring to the mayor is going to be pretty big. I think it's going to be pretty big. It's going to be thick. It's going to have a lot of recommendations, and we'll get some pushback. Some will be accepted right away. Some may not. Some will be a budget concern, but I think we're going to have a nice group of recommendations, so that we think will help improve trust in the community.
Yeah.
So with that said, let us meet on Sunday at 10:30. And I hope everyone will be safe in this snowstorm. And yes.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Richard, one more thing. Are you going to work on the language for that one that we talked about, the one where report all uses of force to a database? We said we were going to kind of expand on that a little bit.
Well, I guess, the one thing we haven't talked about is, or finally decided, and we need to think about this between now and Sunday. Who should have access to the database?
Who should have access to what?
The database.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I mean, should it be the public? Should it be, people outside the police department in government, like we talked about? Should it be, and if so, which people? I mean, who, should be given to the press? We just have to make some, we should think about who should have access to a database. Maybe it should be public, but maybe not.
Yeah, you're right.
Richard, everyone, you can have a database that has various levels of authority to it. So the collection of the data is one thing. The ability to access that data can be administered with varying degrees of accessibility to it.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess, we can recommend it be a database, but then do we want to recommend, like, look, people in the community who make complaints might want to be able to, that there's other complaints against the same police officer. And on the other hand, they not want to have their information be public. So that's another issue. Supposing you make a complaint, but you don't want everybody, Tom, Dick, and Harry to know that you made a complaint.
Right.
It's just,
Mm-hmm.
somebody might say, well, if I make a complaint, I want to make it, but I don't want, I want it to be anonymous, or at least I don't want my name to be released to the general public. I don't know.
Right.
It's something to think about, because there's privacy issues there too.
Absolutely. All right, so we have to think about that one. And I guess the officers have some privacy. I mean, we don't need to know everything about, like when they were late for work, or they got reprimanded because they didn't do this or that, that kind of stuff. I don't think we need to know publicly, or do we?
No.
Okay.
No, that's just, first of all, it's going to be crowding what we're really looking at. It's like instances of serious misconduct, abuse of the public, or abuse of another police officer even. I mean, those are the kinds of things that could present a risk to the community, that, somebody who's got a gun and a badge is, could be a problem.
You're right. All right, so we have, I see what we need to continue to work on, and I'll see you guys on Sunday.
Okay.
Sounds good. Good night, everybody.
Good
Bye-bye.
night, everybody. Stay safe.
You too.